Okay, so we are definitely living in a system of massive propaganda. There's just been a hospital strike in Syria, so I'm just trying to now look at the situation of this war, trying to understand it from a perspective of logic. Um, and the I looked at it was the Independent who published this article, and they blamed it on Bashir and Russia, but they have no evidence of that. Obviously, it's a bomb has just dropped. A couple of people are dead, and a lot of people are wounded, which doesn't sound like a direct hit. It just sounds like an attack to create a story to me. But because US recently bombed a hospital, and there's been all these civilian strikes by the US, UK, Germany, American alliance. French alliance in the recent weeks. So it's kind of like a balanced story. Take the light off the Allied forces who are killing innocent civilians and shouldn't be in the country in the first place, and focus on on a story that can make Bashir and Russia look like the bad guys. But I couldn't understand when it's obvious that both sides are in this battle. I couldn't understand why this article in the Independent was just totally focused on making Bashir and Assad and Russia look like they are totally evil, because it had a whole lot of pictures of destruction in Syria, and it was only them blamed. It was all their attacks, like they're the only ones murdering people. And which no murder would be happening at all, of course, if the Allied forces weren't paying proxy fighters to be there, because they legally can't do a ground assault. It's against international law for them to do a ground assault in Syria, because Syria hasn't provoked an attack, hasn't made an act of aggression. So they have to pay insurgent fighters. I read an article, I didn't finish it, of a UK plan to finance, in 2014, to finance 100,000, finance and train 100,000 insurgents, opposition forces in Syria. I mean, that's just one story, one plan, you know. And the WikiLeaks article with Julian Assange has said Hillary Clinton's emails prove that she's been sending money and weapons to ISIS, arming the jihads, and basically it's ending up with ISIS, and knowingly doing that. So, okay, so what's my point? Why was the Independent doing this? So I said, who owns the Independent? So I looked into it. It's a Russian oligarch. I can't believe it. So I was like, well, what's a Russian oligarch doing? So obviously going against Putin. And so I wanted to look at the history, and it's so interesting. It's so funny. So most recently he went for mayor of Sochi in the Olympic Games, and he was legally held off getting that position. He reckons he had the right to it, and Russia made sure that he didn't have that public face on that international stage to represent Russia. And so I looked back at the history, and in 2011 it seemed like a lot went down, but it's not really clear exactly what happened. In February 2011, this guy had a gang of bullies, corrupt policemen, trying to bribe him out of his business. He had banking interests. He was interest in Gazprom, which is industrial destruction, or the extraction of gas at the great cost of permanently contaminating the underground water supply of the world. He had interests in I forget the name, but a aircraft construction company. So he was constructing aircrafts, no doubt combat aircrafts. So I'm just taking a leap there. I haven't read further, but okay. So here's this guy, like the Dassault family in France, with a history of banking interests in the construction of aircrafts. I'm assuming assault aircrafts. Actually, it's so funny. I just have to say, because I've been saying that the Dassault family, given that they've been profiting off providing means for the mass murder of people through the bombing of innocents and Syrians, that they give their annual profits last year, the year before, for the last 5 years, I think, since the war's begun, and for the next 5 years at least, to help rebuild the lives of Syrians who have lost everything, the millions of people who have been displaced because of these airstrikes, which have no doubt been made with the Dassault aviation aircrafts. So I'm saying that they should give back all the profit, and that I think they should close down their military their military production side of their business and just produce business aircrafts and be a good quality, peaceful company and lead the world by example. So that's my great business strategy for Dassault. But I did find it funny that their name is Assault with a D on the front. That's kind of ironic or suitable. Assault, making money off assaulting people. With a D. Okay, let's get back to the Independent and the London Evening Standard. Please never trust anything you read from those two newspapers. Although the Independent is online, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit naive obviously. I always trusted it, just like I trusted Vice. Really wanted to believe in Vice. But since I know that they're doing the internet campaign for Clinton's presidential race, that was told to me by the owner. Sorry, hi Michael. And they are then on the road with ISIS, who Clinton's sending weapons to, and they've got reporters with, and they're manufacturing this massive brand identity for this killer group of rapists and pillagers, and creating this super brand called On the Road to Damascus. Well, I saw a video posted yesterday of on the streets of Damascus, and that is still a normal looking city, although I'm sure they're absolutely in fear for their lives. But right now it's not bombed to pieces. So here's Vice setting the intention of On the Road to Damascus in this massive super branded documentary series. Something really sick about that, you know, meeting Obama, promoting Hillary. This is an alliance, obvious alliance between media and the war machine. But let's go back again to the Independent and the London Evening Standard. Putin and Alexander Lebedev had a massive fight. So it looks like I'm just like schooling myself on this, but it looks like in 2011, his business was being attacked by corrupt policemen. He asked Putin in an open letter to make them stop. Obviously, it's Putin's administration. From the letter, it didn't accuse Putin of being involved with it, but and I don't know if it stopped, but 2 months later, there was an article in The Guardian saying that Alexander was going to quit his banking business and get involved in the political campaign of Putin, and they were going to partner up. By 2011 September, Alexander was on a TV show, Lebedev was on a TV show with political opponent, punched him out. The guy threatened him apparently, said he wanted to punch him in the face, and so he punched back. And Putin made a fool out of him publicly and joked about the political fight. They don't have a front line. He's got a front line. He's not throwing any punches. They don't have a front line, and they are. Stuff like that. So I guess then they weren't friends. This guy owned a paper in Russia where he published an article that Putin had an affair with a gymnast half his age. He owns a newspaper with Mikhail Gorbachev, and they are the most outspoken against Putin and the Russian administration currently. So these guys are hugely enemies. So no wonder the Independent is publishing an article blaming Russia on bombing a maternity hospital. You know, it's just, we are living in an age of massive propaganda. Who owns these papers and what their objectives are dictates what we read every day. So, you know, this guy can be writing articles that get Britons feeling like we've got to get rid of Bashir. We need to we need to arm and finance 100,000 military insurgents. That's the article I read of 2014. It was a plan at that time for the UK to send money and arms to 100,000 of these moderate rebels who I saw a video of this week beheading a child because they were fighting for another moderate rebel group, but he was just a child from a Palestinian child from a refugee camp. I mean, it's just torture for me to look at those photos of these children and these families being destroyed. But what's of greater torture is that we do nothing about it, and it's our governments getting away with it, and our business oligarchs playing sort of psychological war games with each other. You know, I don't know if this guy still has interests in producing aircrafts and if they're producing combat aircrafts, but maybe he has a business interest in the war. He obviously has a side of the war which is opposing his now reasonably long-term enemy, at least since 2013, which is Putin. And we're just reading their propaganda. It's just a joke. I mean, how on earth do we know who to trust? Vice? No. Sorry. Hi, Shane. But, I mean, they're in with Clinton, Obama, and I say, okay, it could be journalistically meeting Obama and then meeting the heads of ISIS, but super branding ISIS and super branding Clinton at the same time, that is a business relationship that you cannot separate into journalistic integrity stories. That is no integrity to be producing Clinton's web campaign, and that was told to me by one of the owners. So, okay, I digress. You can't trust the London Evening Standard. They want you to think that massive weapons of war needs to be sold to get rid of Bashir's campaign, and they are creating propaganda to make it look like Russia and Bashir are destroying human rights in Syria, when, I'm sorry, we've got to apply logic. This guy, Assad, wants to continue to run his country. He seems to love his people. He wants them to love him. He wants peace and security. I don't think he's done any worse crime than any of our government leaders. Look at Guantanamo. Look at how the protesters are treated in the streets at the moment in America when they're protesting the political elections. They're treated super roughly. I mean, you can apply a parallel to our administrations and their administrations directly. So, I mean, I've said it a million times. This is about stealing a country, and it's little wonder, as I've said, that his peace talks have failed, because it's these militants who are financed and trained by these allied nations trying to steal the country off Syrians and Bashir, their leader, and who are sitting their militant leaders down to negotiate with Bashir. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is really like China and Russia funding militants to fight Obama in America, and then forcing him to sit down and negotiate with those militants who are just like paid talking heads for Russia and China. I mean, that's kind of a parallel that I can't imagine seeing, but I mean, we never know in the future as this war empire progresses out of control, because all of us stay silent, we get on with our lives, we don't want to say anything that might make us like not get jobs, look a bit extreme, look like we're, war, negative. Sorry, I'm like really into positivity and high energy and good quality life, and I want to bathe in the beauty of the world, totally. But how can we do that in good conscience when women and children and men, I do always say that last, but women and children and men are being murdered on the other side of the world? It's by our governments. We cannot stay silent. I love Einstein saying we need to be pacifist militants. We need to fight for peace, intelligently fight for peace. I guess it first comes with information. That's what I'm trying to school myself on at the moment. So, I just want to check. And Lebedev, I read an article that he used to be a spy in London, and he used to use one of the newspapers for his information. I mean, it's just hilarious. But I think I've covered what I wanted to say. We've got to be really, really careful what we listen to. It's propaganda. I'm not sure if it's for his own interests that paper is publishing this kind of a story with no evidence, just automatically blaming Bashir and Assad and Russia, Putin, or if he's doing it in alliance with the Allied Forces governments, or with their arms companies, who are no doubt making millions and billions and trillions of dollars over time with these wars. Who knows? I will keep researching. But for now, don't read The Independent or the London Evening Standard unless you want to read the Allied Forces and the anti-Putin Bashir war plan. It's propaganda. And don't watch Vice. Sorry, Shane and Michael. Just don't like your relationships. Okay, ciao.